Kim, what's on your radar?
Well, another day, another Hunter Biden bombshell. This time, Business Insider published 2 emails discussing Hunter Biden's $2 million lobbying fee to help unfreeze $15 billion in assets for Libya. Now, who would Hunter be lobbying? His dad, of course, who at the time of the emails was the sitting vice president. In the emails obtained by Insider, business contacts of Hunter Biden's discussed the pros and cons of retaining Hunter's services. The cons were the obvious. Hunter Biden is a mess type. They cited him being an alcoholic, a drug addict who chases low-class hookers, and him being a financial disaster. But the pros? Well, they cited him being the chairman of the UN World Food Program. And one would guess this is a plus because this means he would have access to numerous heads of state. They also noted that his business partner is John Kerry's son, who was Secretary of State at the time, that he has access to the highest levels of people in China, and of course, the biggest positive of retaining Hunter Biden, that he's Joe Biden's son, the sitting vice president at the time, holding the Libya file. Reportedly, nothing ever came of this. Hunter wasn't hired, and this sweet gig of lobbying his father to unfreeze Libyan assets never came to pass. But this is just another story in the line of underreported stories about Hunter Biden peddling access to his father. But I want us to take a moment here to look at the real story that's unfolding. The Hunter Biden story isn't actually about Hunter Biden. It's about Joe Biden and whether or not a father who loves his son would desperately do anything to help him. And it's about the activist media establishment who continually refuses to give all the pertinent information so we can make up our own minds. Now, it's hard for many people to imagine Joe Biden is crooked. He's mild-mannered, funny at times, a good family man who tears up when he talks about his love for his son, and he likes dogs. Compare him to Donald Trump, who is a bombastic, self-absorbed billionaire who's cheated on every wife, has been involved in a number of scandalous business dealings, and clearly favors one child over all of his others. But Joe Biden doesn't need to be a slimy politician or bankrupt businessman to do secret backdoor deals that favor his family. He just has to be compromised. And there's nothing more compromising that will drive people to do highly unethical things they otherwise wouldn't do than love. So this leaves us to question, how far was Joe Biden willing to go as vice president to help his son Hunter Biden, especially during a time when he was suffering from the painful loss of losing his other son, Beau? Did Joe Biden allow his love for his son to override his duty for his country? Did he justify in his mind some of his decisions as a government official, even though they were maybe tainted in some way by the needs of his son? We, the people, deserve the right to ask these questions. We deserve the ability to discuss whether or not our sitting president was or even is compromised and perhaps blinded in some way by his desire to save his only living son. And we can have these conversations if we know about them. But how can we know about them when the activist establishment media runs interference on behalf of the powerful elites they are ideologically aligned with? We can't. And so this is why the biggest aspect of the Hunter Biden case, in my opinion, is not just the questions surrounding his father's political fitness and integrity, but it's the absolute assault on our democracy. A corrupt politician isn't the worst thing we could discover. It's the worst thing we can't discover. When we find out about the misdeeds of someone in power, public pressure through the mechanisms of the media grows so loud that the person is often forced to resign. As the media covers the story and splashes it on their front pages day after day, the outrage grows. That's how it works. We can only become outraged over things we know about, but we can only know about them if the media chooses to cover them. Media propaganda is extremely powerful. This is why so many were concerned over Russians buying Facebook ads in the lead up to the 2016 election, and why we are currently living in an era of big tech trying to crack down on misinformation and disinformation. What we hear and see shapes our thinking, which can lead to shaping our actions. And the same goes for what we don't hear. If we don't hear about the misdeeds of a particular politician, we are less likely to form a negative opinion of them. If we don't have a negative opinion, why not vote for them? The health of our democracy hinges on not only the freedom of the press, but on the press actually doing their job. And this entire saga surrounding the Bidens is one of the clearest examples of democracy dying in darkness. When Twitter and Facebook and the entire media establishment collectively decided to disregard the Biden story and even go a step further by classifying it as Russian disinformation, we the people were robbed of the ability to vote with the knowledge that Joe Biden may or may not have allowed his love for his son and possibly monetary influence to cloud his judgment. And the press is still doing it with these latest assertions from Politico that the emails were, in fact, real. And this latest revelation from Business Insider showing Hunter Biden may have been offering his relationship with his dad up for sale to the tune of millions of dollars. The establishment press still remains largely silent. Why? Not because they don't believe the story, they can't make that claim anymore, but perhaps because of a growing activist mentality inside the press that clouds reporters' ability to be impartial, and their management and owners themselves being part of the elite class wanting to protect their own interests. In the end, we the people lose. When we're only force-fed one side of a story, we lose our ability to have access to all the information available in order to make the best informed decision. Lack of information is a literal death nail in our democracy, and that's the biggest and most important aspect of this Hunter Biden story. And this is something that's really concerned me. I mean, look, we definitely need to be looking into Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and whether or not there was anything that actually came of Hunter Biden's efforts in regards to his father and in some of his decision making. We definitely need to be investigating this, and maybe something comes of it or maybe something doesn't. But when the media doesn't shout from the rooftops that, hey, something might be amiss, everybody just kind of goes along their daily lives and they just say, oh, well, nothing to see here, everybody. And that's what the public ends up absorbing. So this to me is the biggest issue that we're facing in regards to this story, was just the complete lack of media coverage of this still going on. I mean, this Libya story, I'm not seeing this really in many of the outlets. But, I mean, that's my feeling on this, is that this is really, truly a democracy issue. Otherwise, we're like North Korea, and it's just like, okay, everybody go vote for the one person that is the good guy. Yeah, and that's the only one who told you. And
in this case, it was the meat, right? With North Korea, it's, the government is prohibiting discussion about, or theoretically would prohibit discussion about a story like this. In our case, it's the media itself, and not universally. Like, I think Maggie Haberman actually shared the New York Post's Biden story, but then she got called out by other people who are part of the team, Joy Reid type people, saying, "How dare you share this misinformation? This is information we don't want people to be able to consume." And that's what's so weird about the moment we're living through, where so many in the media see their job is to prevent you from getting information, is to stop you from hearing things.
Yeah, and it was also a decades-long failure, because the idea that Joe Biden could never do something like this does not square with his career. Going back to the very beginning of his political career, one of the first scandals he was enmeshed in was communicating with a Delaware bank that James Biden, his brother, was having some financial difficulty with, and asking if this could all be worked out. And Hunter Biden did not just kind of stumble into Burisma. This was the tail end of a long career that was spent on the back of his last name, that began with him right out of law school getting a lucrative job with MBNA, which was the most powerful credit card company in Delaware. After he left MBNA, he stayed on as $100,000 a year lobbyist for them. He ended up he became a lobbyist for the University of Delaware, which was getting millions of dollars appropriated to it, from the Congress, where Joe Biden was a key person helping to dole out that money. He and James, set up other companies that very explicitly relied on their connection to his father and James to his brother in order to kind of milk either pension funds and the firemen or cop pension funds, or using their connections to Congress. So this was a decades-long thing that culminated in this situation. Yet Biden has managed to kind of maintain this veneer of that he's above it all, and that he's the poorest United States senator, and how could any of this be possibly true?
Yeah, he's got a nice smile and kind of a good old boy sort of, so people like him. When he talks, he's really likable, a likable guy. So people oftentimes kind of say, oh, well, then you can't possibly be doing anything bad. But the thing about this is the media still is almost treating this story like it's inconsequential. They're kind of like, oh, well, that's in the past. That's his son. No big deal. That's, they're almost treating it like Joe Biden is a deceased, former vice president, and that this is just all inconsequential revelations. And it's just, I got to remind the media that, hey, not only Hunter Biden was potentially, utilizing his father's position as vice president in order to make money. Things are worse now. his dad is now president. This is not like his dad is some retired old, fogey sitting out in Delaware fishing for the rest of his life. I mean, this guy's now president of the United States. So we need to be looking into all of this.
Right. And there are probably a lot of people who think, if the story was so inconsequential, why did you desperately try to suppress us from learning about it? And they might actually draw more conclusions about it. Like, that's what happens when you try to stop people, you try to engage in this kind of censorship, is that some people say, well, why are you, like, then they go in even more paranoid direct, like you're confirming for people all their kind of worst fears about how things work, and you can push them in a more radical place because you didn't trust them with the truth of the story, which everyone deserved to hear. So we'll have more rising right after this.